to welcome you to the Oracle Outlook for the week starting July the 31st, 2017. It's been a few weeks since I worked with my Mad Deck Crush, so I thought it was time. So the deck that's going to be assisting me for this week's reading is once again the Illuminated Tarot. It is by Caitlin Keegan and it is published by Clarkson Potter. So I have the deck on hand. I'm going to take a moment to shuffle the cards. And as I do for each one of these weekly general readings, I set the intention by asking the question, what do we need to know for the week ahead? So when I work with this deck, I shuffle it a few different ways to make sure that I get a really good shuffle. I'm feeling one more time. Will be good. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut the cards. And fan them out. And when I work with this deck, I pick 3 cards. So I'm looking for 3 cards in the fan that's getting my attention. Now that I have the 3 cards picked, I'm putting the remainder of the deck aside. And when I work with this deck, I read the cards from left to right. So the first card is going to be opening things up for this reading. So we have, so here we have the Queen of Spades. So first thing I want to say is I always read the suit emblem first because this deck is a combination of playing card structure and tarot card structure. So the suit of spades can represent problems, it can represent challenges, it can represent obstacles or blocks. So when a spade card for me falls into the first position, it can represent a problem that's going away. So we may be seeing a problem being resolved and on its way out of our lives. So that's the first thing with the suit of spades. Now we have a face card here. We have the Queen of Spades. So for general readings, I tend to look at this as aspects of ourselves, even though this could represent a particular type of person. So the Queen of Spades for me, when it comes up and it represents an aspect of ourselves, we're being asked to approach things by taking a look at what it is that we need to eliminate or remove from our lives. This queen is holding a sword, so it literally represents like what do we no longer need or want in our lives, and what are we willing to do to cut it out. You know, to cut it out, meaning remove it from our lives. It's a process of elimination, right? And that could be the approach that we might need to consider adopting, or the action we need to consider taking in order for that problem, remember the suit emblem being a spade, for that problem to be on its way out. What would we need to do to eliminate something that's going to help that problem go away? Or it could just be a matter of, you know, the process of elimination to remove the problem. But I'm seeing there's a close connection between the two. So there's that. The Queen of Spades can be a type of person who has been having a lot of difficulty. For me, the Queen of Spades can represent a person who's divorced, who's widowed, who's separated. So again, there's that aspect of something being cut or removed from our lives. If you go with the divorce, being widowed, or even the separation aspect, you know, as part of who we are. But usually through some sort of difficult circumstances, this person has adopted a more cynical take on life, you know, because they've continually been in problematic situations, right? So there's that. It could also be a person, if we're talking about removing something from our lives or eliminating something from our lives, then it could be we have a person in our lives who just makes things very difficult. And it could be just because of their own life experience, they tend to make things difficult for other people. So there's that. I'm seeing this idea of separation. So there may be a person we may need to consider because spades represents like mental activity. So consider, you know, separating ourselves from, or allowing that person to remove themselves, or we remove ourselves from, you know, maybe not our lives entirely, but maybe not being so close, because the other part of this card is like an estrangement. So it could be like, maybe how can we create some distance between ourselves and this person if we can't, you know, totally remove this person from our lives, or be removed from their lives. Like, there may be a connection we have to maintain to some degree, but maybe how can we create space? I'm feeling like there may be a little bit of space that needs to be created between ourselves and this other person. So I'm taking a look at the card and saying, what else do I need to say? Oh, the other thing I wanted to say about this, if it's not about a physical person, then this card can come up when we're in the process of needing to make a decision. Remember, spades being about mental activity. And if that's the case, this card is asking us to consider weighing the pros and cons about the choice or the decision. It's about being willing to look at all possible sides, angles, aspects, and perspectives on the situation so you can make the best possible decision. This card comes up when information is needed to make the decision. You know, so being willing to look at it from all different sides, excuse me, might create ways of getting the information that you don't have in the moment. So I'm seeing that aspect of it. This card would suggest, since it's a spade and spades represent mental activity and being in the mind, then this card is saying, how can you maybe take the emotional components, if there's any, out of it, and make the decision from a rational, logical, analytical place or position. So that's a lot to say about this one card. So again, Queen of Spades could represent what will we need to remove, eliminate, cut out from our lives this week, and will we be willing to take that action? If it's a person, we may not be able to totally remove this person from our lives or be removed from that person's life. So we may have to think of ways that we can create space between ourselves, right? So there's that. And lastly, if there's a decision that needs to be made, how can we make the decision from a rational, analytical, intellectual kind of space, you know, and not be as emotional or be as emotionally attached to the situation or even the outcome. So I'm seeing that with the Queen of Spades. Now the next card will give us more as an influence to this card. So the middle card is, okay, so here we have the Four of Hearts. Okay, so hearts is a suit for me that can represent emotions, feelings, which would make sense with what I said about maybe taking the emotional component out of whatever the decision-making process is that's going on for some of us this week. So there is that. The other thing about hearts, hearts represents relationships. So again, we have that other aspect that I talked about. So maybe it's about like creating space between ourselves and another person. I'm looking at this card, and this card for me can represent what's known as divine discontent, right? So this card can come up when we are either bored or dissatisfied, not necessarily happy. I don't want to say unhappy, but it's not like quite being that dissatisfied, but it creates a sense of like being bored or in a rut, something of that nature. There's something going on in a relationship, and this card would suggest a close, intimate relationship, because this card for me is known as the marriage bed card, and so with that it implies, you know, a particular type of intimacy or closeness. So that whole idea about being divorced or estranged that I talked about, it could be, you know, that's how close the relationship is. It could be almost like a marriage. If it's not an actual marriage type of situation, then it could be a relationship that close or that serious or that connected, that we are having a sense of discontent or boredom or dissatisfaction with. So I'm seeing that, and with this card it's about like being in a space of evaluating things, and that would make sense with the Queen of Spades being the first card. So I'm seeing that, and again, it could be like, what would you be willing to do to help you make the decision about what to do going forward with this relationship? You know, from a more rational, analytical place, because the emotions are probably what's keeping you stuck, right? The other thing about this card with the number 4, the 4 is about doing something that allows us a sense of stability, security, and comfort. So that may be what the problem is, because if we pair spades and hearts, we have a combination that suggests either a relationship problem or something that's leaving us in a sense of emotional pain and having to recover from that. So I'm seeing that with the 4 of hearts. So again, here we are, we're looking at a situation in which we're experiencing some sense of discontent, a sense of either being bored, dissatisfied, feeling that sense of being in a rut. It could be a very close and personal relationship, and that might be where the Queen of Spades is talking about creating a sense of space or distance, if that's possible. And it could be, you just might need space to evaluate things better. I've known in my own past experience, sometimes if I'm having challenge with a person that I'm closely connected to, or even related to, this could be a family member, because sometimes hearts represents home and family. Sometimes I need to just kind of take space. I used to say, I need space, I need time to think about things, because I'm a thinker. In relationships, we either tend to be thinkers or feelers, and I'm a thinker. So I need time to process something, I need time to think about it. So maybe not in the moment you can deal with it, but if you create space and take a time out, you can kind of get your head together and think about things, and then come back and work on resolving whatever the issue or the problem is. So I'm seeing that with the 4 of hearts. Now moving on to the final card, we have, this is interesting. Okay, so here we have the Ace of Spades. So the first thing that I'm seeing is that we have a spade at the beginning and we have a spade at the end. So that represents book ending, So the heart being in the middle could suggest that, there's a problem or a challenge that we're experiencing. We get a pause, and then the problem either comes back or it resumes or something of that nature. But there's a pause or a break in the situation. Now, I love what I said about the Queen of Spades, about being in a process of making a decision, because the Ace of Spades, one of the meanings for me with this card, is about a decision being made. So if you're not able to make it at the beginning of the week, you may get the information that allows you to make that decision, because again, this card is about a decision being made, right? And this card is a wonderful card because it usually represents clarity. It represents getting to the truth of a situation, right? So there's that. And with that, then the Queen of Spades is all about getting to the heart of the matter. And isn't that interesting that we have a heart in the center position here? And so the heart can represent the central issue, central focus. So it's getting to the heart of the matter. And so this card will represent getting some sort of truth. This card comes up when we have received an answer or a solution to a problem that we've been experiencing. So I love seeing this card at the end. It could represent a new way of thinking. It could be a new idea. This card can represent, a lifestyle change, and so that would represent the beginning of a lifestyle change. Now, when the Ace of Spades comes up, it can represent whatever this new thing is. It could represent a bumpy start, because spades, again, remember, represents problems and challenges. So this could be the beginning of a new challenge, the start of a challenge, a situation that has a problematic start, those kinds of things. But in this particular case, when this card comes up and we're talking about potentials for problems and challenges, this card suggests that we have what it takes to overcome those challenges. It's like going down a road and you get to a speed bump, right? So this card is like the speed bump card. It's not to say that when you get to the speed bump, you turn your car around, you go over the bump, right? So you don't let that bump allow you to believe that the road you're going down is the wrong road, right? So it just represents whatever changes you're going to make, they may start off kind of bumpy, but hang in there because you'll get to the other side of that. So summing up, again, the cards are just making me feel like this is a week where we are actively working on resolving an issue or problem. It could be between ourselves and another person, with the Four of Hearts being in the middle and representing relationships. So it could be what work are we willing to do in a relationship to resolve it? It could be one of the resolutions could be like we have to create space or we have to eliminate certain people from our lives, that kind of thing. And will we be willing to do that, right? It could also be too, if it's not about a particular relationship, let's say, and it's about needing to make some kind of decision, we may, at the beginning of the week, not have all the information we need to have to make the best possible choice or assume the best possible course of action, right? But with the Ace of Spades at the end, it says that that decision will be made because you will gain some sort of clarity, you will get the answer or solution to resolve the problem, and then you could take action on that. If you are considering embarking on something new, the Ace of Spades at the end says it could potentially be a little bumpy at the start, but don't let the bumps deter you. So on that note, I will wrap up and end this week's Oracle Outlook. I'm Jameson Mitchell, and as I close for this week's reading, I want to thank you for sharing space here with me this week, and I look forward to sharing the same space with you again next week. So until then, I'm hoping that you have a wonderful day, and I'm hoping that you have a tarot-tastic week. Take care.